Good morning and welcome to Five a Day. Apologies for those who tune in at 9 and find, hey, hang on a minute, it's kind of as just about finishing. You can rewind it. I've just got to be away a few minutes earlier than normal. But during lockdown, during these 12 weeks of lockdown, one of the things that I've really found fantastic are the amount of people who've just stepped up to help. As time has gone on, people have realised, or many people have realised, that more and more people are struggling. Perhaps it's because they're struggling themselves, perhaps because they've got free time, maybe initially they weren't laid off, or initially they had plenty of things to do. But I think a lot of people, it's the awareness that there are people who are really struggling, people they know, people they've come across with just their own feelings, and have wanted to get involved. Projects that started 10, 12 weeks ago to help people, many are struggled now, many are finding it difficult for premises or funding financially, but there are a tremendous amount of people who are just giving of themselves, giving their time and energy. We know in the project that we've got chefs, we've got people who come from all sorts of backgrounds. They might be actors or musicians or business people who are giving what time they can in and around work if they're working. If not, some are there every day helping. Let me read you a few verses from 2 Corinthians 8. This is Paul writing. Now I want you to know, my dear brothers and sisters, what God in his kindness has done through the churches in Macedonia. They are being tested by many troubles, and they are very poor. But they are also filled with abundant joy, which has overflowed in rich generosity. For I can testify that they gave not only what they could afford, but far more, and they did it of their own free will. They begged us again and again for the privilege of sharing in the gift for the believers in Jerusalem. So here we've got the poorest who were begging to give. They wanted to be part of helping others. And that might seem strange, but it's not. A couple of surveys that I looked at just recently, one going back to about 2000 in this country, and what it said was that, and then we're going to back to 2000, so the figures I mentioned here of, you've got to bear that in mind. They're saying that the poorest give on average 4.5% of their income to good causes, to charity, other good causes, whereas those who were owning 40,000 or more gave 2%. Therefore, the lie that actually it's the middle class that do it all. There's another survey I saw that was just taken about 9-10 years ago in the States, and that said the poorest 20% give 3.2%, and the richest 20% give 0.9% of their income away. Why is that? I think it's maybe harks back to what I was saying earlier. I think those who are poor, those who are in need, recognise the needs that are around them, recognise the needs of the other, recognise that other people will need. Those who are kind of well off and rich maybe don't recognise the needs, and that's something that we've seen through this. Even more so, we're coming up to this weekend, 3 years when the Grenfell Tower fire hit. Incredible tragedy, took 72 lives and has devastated a whole community. And its impacts are incredible. But what we saw there was that many people from outside, many people from around the city, around the world, were in touch with us, and they couldn't believe the disparity in the way in which these people in one of the richest boroughs in one of the richest cities in the world were housed, and what conditions they were in, and their poverty compared to neighbours. They couldn't understand it. They didn't realise it. They just wondered how this could happen, and many flocked to come and help. We literally had hundreds of people coming to help and helping, and many of them were just shocked by it. And You know, it's terrible that we have to be in need to recognise that others, but we don't. What happens is we tend to live in our own bubbles, our own little circles, and we don't recognise what's needed. Christ came for the poor. He came for those who hurt him. He came for the widows, the fatherless and orphans. And it came for all, but it particularly mentions that how do we live out? What should we be doing? And he says, like, well, if you care for these, if you care for those who are not going to give you anything back, there's no transactional relationship. Okay, maybe the transaction is sometimes people do things because it makes them feel better or it clears their conscience. But to live that life, it doesn't work, because these are people who you're not going to get anything back off. These are situations that there is no direct payback, you know. It's not like going and doing following years voluntary somewhere and being looked after well and putting it on your CV to enhance it. No, what we're talking about is this kind of just giving of yourself. Why? Because you recognise the needs, because you recognise that there are fellow human beings that need it. And I'm so glad that so many people are seeing that and so many people are responding. And as Christians, that should be how we live all our life. It shouldn't take tragedies. It shouldn't take situations like this. One of the things I think we'll do after this is to make sure we've got a hardship fund as a church that's there to help in times like these, but also for those who are going through troubles, difficulties. Maybe people will understand better the need for it. God bless you. Have a great day and think about that. Think about God's word and pray for one another.